Thank you for clicking on this Smashy Smashy Eggman movie reviews and more bonus video. Happy Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas Eve. I don't know what the correct wording is. So what am I doing here? Why am I shooting a video on Christmas Eve? I watched a movie last night and decided I wanted to talk about it because I didn't just watch the movie. I did something else also recently that led to me wanting to make this video. And I just decided to do it today. I decided to make it today, and I did not turn on my overhead light, so I'm not getting up to do that now. So last night I watched Gremlins, the classic, one of my favorite movies, top 100 favorite movies. Gremlins 2 is my all-time favorite movie, but Gremlins is right up there, in the top 100 as well. I love this movie, Gremlins 2. That's the shirt I'm wearing. I'm wearing a Gremlins 2 shirt on Christmas Eve, because why the hell not? So, I was watching Gremlins 2, I was watching Gremlins, the Christmas classic, last night. Just part of my Christmas, movie watching things. But I had realized something that made me want to make this video. Isn't because I want to talk Gremlins. I talk a lot about Gremlins on this show. You can find many videos of me talking Gremlins. What I want to talk about is more specific, because it also happens that within the last week, I also finished rereading the novelization of Gremlins. Now, why? It's the novelization of the movie. So this isn't its own book. It wasn't a book and then it was a movie. It was a movie and then they turned the movie into a book. And a lot of these movie novelizations aren't that interesting. Some of them can be really interesting. I know the one for Gremlins 2 it's a display piece. I'm never reading it again. I read it once when I got it. I'm never reading it again because it's not an interesting... it doesn't do anything. However, the novelization of Gremlins does do a lot that's different than the movie, which I find interesting. I find it interesting that either who wrote this? I know a novel by George Gipe. Either George Gipe was given a lot more freedom to work on the novelization, or he was given a much earlier script that involved a way different things, plot points, than what ended up in the Gremlins movie. So I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about how this book is a great companion piece to this movie and is a great alternate telling of this story, because that's what it is. It's an alternate telling because it is not a beat-for-beat retelling of Gremlins. You can't just read the book and go, oh yeah, I remember that from the movie. There is some of that. That happens. First and foremost, you get way more backstory on the Mogwais. The book actually tells you where they're from, how they were created, all of that. There is no mystery. It's not a random creature. It is a creature from outer space that was created by a guy named Morgimer. It's a weird name. He created the Mogwai to be the greatest smart and friendly creatures. Unfortunately, there's a flaw that only 1 in 100 actually turn out that way, and most of them turn out to be little evil bastards. He also programmed in the other flaws into them by accident, such as the turning into gremlins is a flaw. The eating after midnight, cocooning gremlins, that's a flaw. He wanted them easily multiplicated, so the multiplication due to water is actually meant to be there. He wanted these smart, nice, intelligent creatures to be able to multiply quickly, so that's why he built that in. And the aversion to bright light is, again, it's just another thing he didn't get right. But before anyone realized the problems with the Mogwai, they shipped them out. So they didn't do product testing. They just shipped them out to various planets, Earth being one of them. Gizmo is a minority Mogwai, meaning he's actually created correctly. He is a good, sweet, he is an everything Mogwai. And his offspring will almost always be evil little bastards. And also, you find out Gizmo is so intelligent, he is unable to communicate. So, he wants to speak human, but he's unable to. Because you also get internal thoughts of Gizmo throughout the book. So you actually get his thoughts, and once he multiplies, you get him talking to Stripe and the other Mogwai / Gremlins as the book goes on. This book takes a lot of time getting to where it's about a 300-page book. It takes its good time to get to places, whereas the movie being an hour and 40 minutes, it has to keep moving. The movie's got a great pace. The book is allowed to slow down and breathe a little. You find out what Rand Pelser actually does for a living, that although he is an inventor, that is not what pays the family's bills. It is the fact that he does have a day job as a product salesman for a company, which is cool. I like that. Again, it's slightly more depth. You get a little more about Billy and his interest in Kate, and how everyone's interested in Kate, and he's not sure, he's not confident enough to approach this beautiful woman that everybody wants. You also do get the subplot that was deleted from the movie about Mrs. Deagle attempting to sell the town to high tox chemicals. That is not in the movie. It is a deleted subplot. It is still in the novelization. Also, the whole Bavarian snowman thing is explained in the novelization. When Mrs. Deagle shows up at the bank with the head of her Bavarian snowman saying that Barney destroyed it, in the movie, you don't see any of that. She just shows up at the bank, and you're just assuming it happened sometime off screen. In the book, you find out it actually happened on the way to the bank. One of Mrs. Deagle's cats got out, and she has a cat door in the movie, so I get why. In the book, it's very different how the Deagle events play out. One of her cats got out and was almost run over by the police car. Billy saves the cat, brings it back to Mrs. Deagle's house. Mrs. Deagle is a total bitch to him, and then Billy has to book it to get to work on time, and Barney bumps the snowman. He doesn't, run into it. It is already a broken snowman that Barney lightly bumps into, and the snowman collapses, leaving only its head. So it explains that. It explains how, what actually happened in those events to get Barney to destroy the Bavarian snowman, which again, I think it's cool. I think it's cool the book gets to do that. The book also spends a little more time covering, the life cycle of the Gremlins. The Mogwais, who are born from Gizmo, don't actually know any of the rules. They don't know any of the secrets of their being. In fact, they learned them partially through experience. They learned the sunlight thing when one of the 5 Mogwais, who all survive in the movie, they're all there in the movie to turn into Gremlins, but in the book, one of them actually gets locked outside and dies when the sun hits it. And that's how the other 4 Mogwais learn they can't be in the sun. Sun kills them. They learn that secret. They learn the second secret when Billy takes the Mogwai to Mr. Hansen's classroom, and they multiply that Mogwai. He brings back the one who actually gave birth instead of the one that's the new Mogwai. So now they know water multiplies them. There's also a great bit of Gizmo trying to persuade Stripe to multiply, because Stripe knows numbers bring power, but he also knows somewhere in his genetics that there is a way for him to become more powerful. He just doesn't know how, and Gizmo won't tell him. So there's this great moment of Gizmo knowing if they multiply, there's a great bigger chance of them discovering how to become a gremlin. So he uses reverse psychology to trick Stripe into not multiplying as a Mogwai. And actually them turning into gremlins is 100% accidental. Stripe is trying to get Billy's attention to feed them. It doesn't even realize it's after midnight. He's just trying to get Billy to feed him. But Billy's watching Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which he is watching in the movie in that scene. And so Stripe goes to unplug the TV and unplugs the clock. And that's how Billy notices, looks at the clock, sees what time it is, and feeds them. Not because they, strategically chewed through the wires, because Stripe unplugged the wrong thing. Is is how we get to that moment of him feeding them after midnight, and the gremlin with um, Mr. Hansen. That one still happens the same way. Once the gremlins turn into gremlins, you get a great extra beat of a very different setup for Mr. Hansen's death. Whereas in the movie, he's just trying to lure the gremlin out of the dark with a candy bar. He actually uses the fact that he knows he doesn't know the rules. He knows two of the rules. Water multiplies them, light kills them. He was not given the don't feed them after midnight rule, because there's literally a chapter in the book that's just the words Pete forgot, because Pete plays a much bigger character. He looks up to Billy as an older brother, and he actually is looking for love advice from Billy. So you get a little more depth to one of those side characters. Anyways, Mr. Hansen uses this knowledge to basically create a barrier. So he turns on perimeter lights in his lab to box in the gremlin as he goes to take yet another blood sample, and the gremlin basically mauls him. The book it says it jumps out of a thing, drives a claw into his chest and back, and that's how Mr. Hansen dies. How that gremlin, who escapes in the movie, he gets out of the school, and you just assume he dies in the theater, though you never get any clarification as to what happened to that gremlin. Billy doesn't go after him. You don't see Billy kill it. It doesn't necessarily multiply, because it might not know how. Again, if you're following the book logic, it doesn't know how, just because it hasn't actually multiplied yet, but it escapes. In the book, the gremlin is killed when Billy tries to defend himself when it attacks him using a fire extinguisher, and the gremlin shoves its head into the fire extinguisher, and Billy activates it. So the gremlin dies choking on fire extinguisher fluid, which I think is great. I think that's a great death. I would have loved to have seen it in the movie. It also goes into the rules a little more, and why, a lot of people look at gremlins and go, well, why aren't they multiplying? They're walking around in the snow. Book! Billy theorizes that the reason they're not multiplying by walking around in the snow is that the water needs to be at least room temperature. So the fact that it's colder outside, it isn't melting, the water itself isn't going to actually make them multiply until it gets heated up to room temperature. Does that mean when they're in Dory's Tavern, they should have been multiplying like mad? I guess you can argue a couple of other science factors, how long the water actually stays on them, if it evaporates before it reaches room temperature, depending on how much is actually on them. Also, looking at the movie, this is a point coming from the movie, it looks like body mass, how much is covered does affect it, where a mogwai is a much smaller creature, a drop of water creates the reaction. If you watch the movie, it looks like it takes more contact than that. Stripe submerges himself into a pool, and at the fountain, he's getting wet on his face. Water's hitting his face, it's sprinkling his chest, he's not multiplying until he, submerges a portion of his body into the water. And even Gremlins 2, they have to be doused with a hose and or sprinkler system to create the multiplication in Gremlins. So that one I just argue, I don't think little bits of water does it anymore. I think you need more body mass coverage to create a new gremlin, because these things need to boil from a point. And so I think the point needs to be whatever the size of the initial boil is. Again, the book doesn't cover that. That's just a theory. It also covers that it has to be clean water. Because Gizmo is hit with clean water, and that's how he multiplies. He is then, later on, one of the Mogwais gets doused with water mixed with something else. I think it's water paint mixture, and it doesn't do anything, because it's not just water. So it has to just be water. It can't be, if you threw a soda on a gremlin, it's not going to multiply. It's not just water. So I wonder if a gremlin would multiply in today's water systems, just because there's so much other crap in there. I don't know. But yeah, the The book handles all that stuff really nice. It's got a lot of other little things because you get to spend more time with the Mogwais doing mischief in Billy's house. You get it's a way different experience with the Gremlins doing mischief throughout the town. In fact, they send in the army to deal with the Gremlins. They openly state that they are Gremlins. So in this universe, they know what a Gremlin is, and they're openly sent in to deal with it. Mr. Futterman does die in the novelization. Mrs. Deagle still dies by being catapulted out of her house, but there's a slightly different setup to it than in Le Movie. Gerald being locked in the bank is still in the book, but it's a very different dialogue than the deleted scene from the movie. Basically, he's gone mad and wants to make a bank for Gremlins. That's his goal in life. I don't think they're openly watching Snow White and Gremlins in the book. I think they're just in the theater because the theater is dark. And they never try to attack Billy and Kate as they're about to blow them up. The whole ending in the store is functionally different. Like, they still end up in the store. It's still Billy facing off with Stripe, but like Rand, Billy's dad, actually does something in the book with the bathroom buddy. He uses the bathroom buddy to save Billy from Stripe by spraying him in the face with toothpaste or shaving cream to get Stripe to run away. So, in the book, the bathroom buddy and Rand both have a payoff. Also, there's a lot more problems with the lights, where in the movie, Kate just rips open something and turns on all the lights. In the book, it's a way more complicated process to turn on lights. Like I said, overall, they're both very... It's the same story, but it's told very differently with a lot of different setups and a little more character development in one or the other. So this is a great movie. Gremlins, it's a great movie. The book is actually a really good book. And I know, it's a novelization. So again, a lot of these are hard to say, oh, it's a really good book. Most of them, it's like, it's a fine book. See the movie, it'll save a lot of time. This is one of those movie novelizations I look at and go, no, read the book. The book is just as good of a story as the movie, and it's got enough differences and nuances that it's actually really interesting. And it changes. It is really like reading, if you're going to watch the movie Red Dragon and you read Red Dragon before it, if you're going to watch Murder on the Orient Express and you read the Agatha Christie book before it, that's how this feels. This almost feels like it was a book before it got turned into a movie and not vice versa, because there was so much subtlety and so much, and there's enough that's different and enough that gets explained how you would do it in a book versus a movie that it's a really good read. So I highly suggest it. I know it's not the easiest book in the world to find because it was published in 1984. I also have the children's version. This is the adult novelization. I also have the child's novelization. I have not read that yet. I got that a couple of weeks ago in the mail. I have not read the child's novelization. I might, just for, shits and grins. But, yeah, definitely, if you've never checked out Gremlins, check it out. The movie, you can get a copy of the book. Check out the book. It's really good. Again, Gremlins 2, the new batch. Love that movie. Favorite movie of all time. Not a good book. Not a good book. But Gremlins, this is a good book. All right, thanks for watching this video. Merry Christmas Eve. Happy holidays, all that stuff. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm Martin Prevost. This is Smashy Smashy Eggman. Movie reviews and more. Talking about a book, that'd be more. And I will talk to you later.